This video is a summary of our paper, rTisane, Externalizing Conceptual Models for Data Analysis Prompts Reconsideration of Domain Assumptions and Facilitates Statistical Modeling. The motivation for this work comes from the challenges analysts face when authoring statistical models. For instance, let's consider the following example, adapted from our public health collaborators. Our collaborators have the following research question. How does insurance coverage influence healthcare spending? To answer their research question, they must author a statistical model using languages like R and Python. To author a statistical model that helps them answer their research question accurately, analysts must consider their background knowledge about how variables in their domain relate to one another. Without doing this, they may author statistical models that are not only faulty, but also misrepresent their domain knowledge and research question, ultimately leading to meaningless or nonsensical answers. In our prior work examining the process by which analysts translate their research questions and hypotheses into statistical model implementations, we found that conceptual models are key. These conceptual models capture key assumptions about the domain an analyst is working in that should be accurately reflected in the statistical models authored. While existing systems for conceptual modeling exist, it is unknown what kinds of support actual analysts want, how they see conceptual modeling systems fitting into their practice, or what the impact of conceptual modeling on the resulting statistical models that are authored are. In this work, we asked the following two research questions. First, how should tools support analysts while they are authoring conceptual models? Second, what is the impact of this support? To answer these questions, we conducted an exploratory study, developed the rTisane system, and evaluated rTisane. Overall, we found that analysts want some non-obvious features in their conceptual modeling language, tool support for conceptual modeling enables user reflection, and the statistical models from rTisane are quality even when the users have less statistical experience or cannot author a statistical model on their own without tool support. First, let's dive into specific findings from the exploratory study. For the exploratory study, our goal was to understand how analysts want to articulate their implicit domain knowledge. To answer this question, we conducted an in-lab study where we asked participants to use an existing open-source library to express their conceptual models about a paper that they had read prior to coming into the lab. We used the existing library as a probe to gauge challenges and opportunities for expressing conceptual models. We had 4 key takeaways from our exploratory study. Analysts want to express how variables relate to one another in detail, more than we expected. Analysts find moderation difficult to separate from bivariate relationships. Analysts distinguish between known and suspected relationships. And finally, analysts want to consider alternative conceptual structures. One finding we want to highlight is the first one, since it was particularly surprising to us. We found that analysts had a lot of knowledge about specifically how variables responded to one another that they wanted to express but could not at their desired levels of abstraction in existing tools. These findings overall informed our design of rTisane. rTisane is a system that consists of a DSL, or a domain-specific language, and a 2-step interactive disambiguation process. Here is an example program in rTisane that our collaborator would write. The main interesting constructs pertain to the conceptual relationships, so let's focus there. Analysts can specify relationships between variables using either causes or relates. Causes specifies a unidirectional influence from one variable to another. Relates, on the other hand, specifies the existence of some influence between 2 variables, but the direction remains ambiguous. This turned out to be important for helping analysts think through and consider alternative conceptual assumptions. Optionally, analysts can also add annotations to describe in greater detail specifically how variables relate to one another. This goes to provide analysts with the level of detail they desired at times when expressing their conceptual models. Finally, analysts can either assume or hypothesize relationships. Assume here means that based on prior work or a strong belief, the analysts want to assume the conceptual relationship as existing in the world. Hypothesize indicates the focus of the analysis now. This distinction was designed to help analysts distinguish between known and suspected relationships. A program using the rTisane DSL is then compiled into a graph. This graph may contain a cycle due to the ambiguous or bidirectional relationships from the relates construct. To soundly infer a statistical model from this graph, analysts must break this cycle. Cycles are problematic because, first and foremost, they can encode multiple data-generating processes, and as a result can suggest very different statistical models. To resolve this cycle, the system reflects back to the analyst the conceptual graph they specified and suggests ways to resolve this ambiguity. This occurs in a graphical user interface. Resolving this conceptual ambiguity is the first step in the two-step interactive disambiguation process. Upon picking a way to break the cycle and remove the ambiguity, rTisane updates the internal graph representation. Then, using this updated graph, rTisane can infer or derive possible statistical models. Then, using this updated graph, rTisane can derive possible statistical models. While there are a number of decisions that rTisane can make automatically from this graph alone, there can be multiple candidate statistical models. As a result, rTisane needs additional end-user input to narrow the space to one final statistical model. To do so, rTisane engages analysts in the second interactive disambiguation step, asking analysts more targeted questions about the statistical model's formulation in this graphical user interface. The result of the second interactive disambiguation step is that analysts receive a script for fitting a statistical model. The resulting statistical model accurately estimates the influence of the variable of interest and is conceptually grounded and represents what the analyst believes to be the data-generating process based on their domain knowledge. We evaluated rTisane in a controlled within subjects lab study. We had two motivating research questions for this evaluation. First, what is the impact of rTisane on analysts' conceptual modeling processes? And second, what is the impact of rTisane on the quality of resulting statistical models? We found that rTisane guided analysts to think about and even reconsider their domain assumptions. rTisane also structured analysts' processes of externalizing or expressing their conceptual models. In terms of the impact on statistical model quality, we found that rTisane enabled analysts who otherwise would not be able to author statistical models to author statistical models using rTisane. Additionally, the statistical models from rTisane fit the data just as well as, if not better than, statistical models authored without rTisane based on AIC and BIC scores. One analyst even reused rTisane's output statistical model to iterate on their own, which we see as a promising way in which analysts might integrate rTisane into their analysis practices in the future. So, to summarize, rTisane helped analysts reflect on and reconsider their implicit domain assumptions and enabled authoring of quality statistical models. Just to recap, in this paper, we conduct an exploratory study, develop the rTisane system, and evaluate rTisane. We find that analysts want non-obvious language constructs to express their conceptual models, and we also find that tool support for conceptual modeling enables user reflection and results in quality statistical models.